guys, thanks for watching the episode of Grit last week. This trip was admittedly a little messy.
Oh, you're good. I was just letting you know we're here.
But we had a great time down there, and we had some good encounters with some great bucks. This hunt was the first week of November. So in this episode, we're going to talk about what we looked for e-scouting, how weather affected some of our decisions, and lastly, we'll touch on how we approach asking for permission. To start, let's talk about the e-scouting in this scenario, so hill country during the first week in November. There are three main variables we focus on here: food, water, and bedding. For food, we typically look for ag fields. We like running water like creeks and rivers for water sources. And for bedding, we look for those typical bedding points. But since it's the rut and we're focused on does, bedding can be a little bit less consistent. So let's take a look at the map here to see one of the areas you saw us hunt in the Grit episode last week. On the map, you'll see all the variables I just mentioned. We have ag fields in the bottom, you have a creek running down here, and you have good bedding points nearby. The creek also provides great bedding opportunities, and we find a lot of deer bedded right here on the banks. You'll also see this area has great diversity. You have hardwoods, some pine, some CRP up top here, and even a cedar thicket that bucks and does love for bedding. Now, moving on to the weather. Weather definitely plays less of a role this time of year because it's the rut, but there are some weather events that act like a catalyst for deer movement. You saw that we had rain and some really high winds on this trip. Hunting before and after these major fronts is crucial for upping your encounter numbers. One key point here is timing. If you have heavy rains or winds, make sure you get in the tree in time to catch movement as soon as the weather moves through. You saw in the episode that Joey and I were too late getting in the tree and screwed up a great opportunity that likely would have resulted in a dead deer, assuming I made a good shot. Point being, don't be late if you get a significant weather event like this. Lastly, let's talk about asking permission.
Time to go beg for some permission.
This is something that I have been uncomfortable with for a long time, but I forced myself to do it more recently, and the positive impact it's had on our encounter numbers is undeniable. My favorite pieces to target for permission are the ones that border public land. It's important to look at an area holistically instead of analyzing parcels within property lines. Your best chance at getting permission is on properties that don't regularly get asked, and these pieces are the overlooked ones. Even if the piece doesn't have exactly what you're looking for, it might give you one piece of the puzzle that you're missing and can oftentimes give you better access. Now, when we ask permission, I always say the same general thing. First, I introduce myself and I apologize for bugging them. This usually takes their guard down and opens them up for a conversation. I then go on to explain what we're doing and ask if they would ever consider giving us permission to bow hunt. Surprisingly, I have rarely had an outright no, and the no's I do get are usually because other family members are hunting the property. Long story short, if you're polite, honest, and appreciative of their time, it will be a positive conversation more often than not. So let's quick summarize this episode. First, when we're e-scouting for these trips, the first week in November in hill country, we always like to find three main things: food, water, and bedding. During this time of year, based on our observations, the food source to focus on is cut cornfields. This seems to really concentrate the doe. Next, if you get a significant weather front, make sure you're in the tree right before and right after the front moves through. And try not to be late like we were, even if you have to get a little wet. Lastly, asking permission and interacting with the people who live there can be crucial for increasing your encounters with good bucks. When we ask permission, we introduce ourselves, we apologize for bugging them, and we ask if they would ever consider giving us permission to bow hunt. You're obviously going to get some no's, but this talk track has worked really well for us recently. So that sums up the 7th hunt recap. As always, thanks a lot for checking out the video. It's finally almost October 1st. You can feel the weather changing, so good luck out there this season. And we'll see you next week for episode 8 of Grit, which is our hunt down in Ohio, and our final episode of the year.